Hey Reddit, I never thought I'd find myself writing here, but the events of last night have left me spinning. I don't even know where to start, so I guess I'll start from the beginning. My name's Elliot, and until yesterday, I thought I had a pretty decent life. I'm married to Claire, my wife of 6 years. She's beautiful, charming, and has always been the center of attention. People adore her, probably too much, if I'm being honest. We've been having some rough patches lately, mostly small things like her coming home late from work or being glued to her phone during dinner. Nothing earth-shattering, but enough to put me on edge. Every time I brought it up, she'd roll her eyes and say I was overthinking things. "It's just work," she'd say. "You know how demanding my boss is." I wanted to believe her, but something about her behavior didn't sit right with me. Last week, Claire told me she was going to a coworker's party, a surprise birthday celebration for her boss. "It's kind of a big deal," she said casually while scrolling through her phone. "All the department heads will be there, and it's important for me to show my face. Do you want me to come with you?" I offered, trying to sound supportive. She laughed, a little too quickly, a little too dismissively. "No, it's fine. Spouses aren't really invited. Plus, you'd be bored out of your mind." That response stayed with me. Claire was always eager to show me off at events. Why was this one different? I didn't push the issue, though. I figured I'd let it slide and not make a big deal out of it. The day of the party came, and Claire left the house looking stunning. She was wearing a sleek black dress, the kind that clung to her figure in all the right ways. She kissed me on the cheek and said she wouldn't be too late. "Don't wait up," she added with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I tried to distract myself that evening, watched TV, ordered takeout, even started reading a book, but something kept gnawing at me. Call it paranoia, gut instinct, or just the accumulation of weeks of weird behavior. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Around 10 p.m., I decided to text her. "How's the party?" I wrote. Her response came almost immediately. "Busy. Lots of people here. I'll tell you all about it when I get home." Something about her quick reply felt rehearsed, almost like she was waiting for me to text. That's when I made the decision that would change everything. I knew the name of the restaurant where the party was being held. It was on the invitation Claire had left on the counter earlier that week. It was a fancy place downtown, the kind that had private rooms for events. I grabbed my car keys and told myself I was just going to check in, make sure everything was fine. Honestly, I didn't even know what I was looking for. Maybe I just needed to prove to myself that I was being ridiculous. When I arrived, the restaurant was bustling. I could hear music and laughter coming from the private event space upstairs. I walked in, hoping to blend in as just another guest. No one paid me much attention as I made my way to the second floor. The moment I stepped into the room, I spotted her. Claire was standing near the bar, a glass of wine in hand, laughing at something a tall, broad-shouldered man was saying. He was leaning in close, too close. She had her hand on his arm, her body language completely open to him. I froze, a sick feeling twisting in my stomach. But I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was just friendly banter, I told myself. Maybe I was being irrational. I decided to hang back and observe. Over the next 20 minutes, I watched as Claire and this man, let's call him Jason, continued their little dance. They were too comfortable with each other, too familiar. At one point, he whispered something in her ear, and she laughed, leaning into him in a way that made my blood boil. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I walked straight up to them, my heart pounding in my chest. Claire's laughter died instantly when she saw me. Her face went pale, and for a moment, she looked like a deer caught in headlights. "Elliot," she stammered, her voice high-pitched. "What are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice low and steady, though I felt anything but calm. "You told me this was a work event. Doesn't look very professional to me." Jason stepped back, clearly uncomfortable. I think I'll let you two talk," he mumbled before disappearing into the crowd. Claire's expression shifted from shock to anger. "I can't believe you followed me here," she hissed. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" "Oh, I'm sorry," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Did I interrupt your cozy little moment with Jason? She opened her mouth to respond, but before she could say anything, the music stopped and all eyes turned to us. Apparently, our argument was louder than I realized. "What's going on?" someone in the crowd asked. Whispers started spreading like wildfire, and I could feel the weight of everyone's stares. Claire grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin. "Let's go outside," she said through gritted teeth. "No," I said, pulling away. "We're doing this right here." And that's when I said the words that left everyone in the room stunned. As the room went silent, I took a deep breath and looked Claire dead in the eyes. My voice was loud enough for everyone to hear, but calm enough to cut through the tension like a knife. "So, Claire," I began, my words slow and deliberate, "why don't you tell everyone here how long you've been sneaking around behind my back? Or should I fill them in myself?" Her face turned ghostly pale, and the murmurs in the room grew louder. Some people gasped, while others exchanged awkward glances, clearly unsure of how to react. Claire's hands clenched into fists, her carefully crafted confidence crumbling in front of me. "Elliot, stop it," she hissed, her voice trembling. "You're making a scene." "Oh, I'm making a scene?" I snapped, my anger boiling over. "That's rich coming from you. You've been lying to me for weeks, no, months, and now you're mad because I dared to show up and see it for myself?" I could see Jason hovering near the edge of the crowd, his face a mix of guilt and panic. "Maybe Jason would like to chime in," I said, pointing directly at him. "What's the matter, buddy? Cat got your tongue?" Jason hesitated, his eyes darting between me and Claire. Finally, he held up his hands in surrender. "Look, man, I didn't know she was married, okay? She told me you two were having problems, that it was over between you." Claire spun around, her voice sharp and defensive. "Jason, shut up," she snapped. "But it was too late. The damage was done. You told him it was over?" I asked, my voice breaking. "You didn't even have the decency to end things with me before starting up with him?" Claire's expression hardened, her guilt replaced by defiance. "You don't understand, Elliot," she said, her tone icy. "You've been so distant lately, always complaining, always doubting me. I felt neglected." Her words hit me like a slap in the face. Neglected? Was she serious? I'd been bending over backward trying to keep our marriage together, while she was out here playing the victim. Neglected? I repeated, my voice shaking with disbelief. "You felt neglected, so your solution was to cheat on me? To humiliate me in front of all these people? How is that supposed to fix anything?" Claire crossed her arms, her face a mask of defiance. "It's not like you've been perfect, Elliot. You're always whining about your job, your stress, your insecurities. Do you have any idea how exhausting that is? How unattractive?" Her words cut deeper than I expected. For a moment, I stood there, stunned into silence. The murmurs around us grew louder, and I could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on me. But then, something inside me snapped. I realized I didn't care what these people thought. I didn't care about Claire's excuses or Jason's weak attempts to look innocent. I was done. Done with the lies, the manipulation, the endless cycle of trying to make a marriage work when only one of us was actually trying. "You know what, Claire?" I said, my voice steady now. "You're right. I'm not perfect, but at least I've been honest. At least I've been faithful. Can you say the same?" She didn't answer, and the silence that followed was deafening. "I'll save you the trouble," I continued. "We're done. You can stay here with Jason or whoever else you've got lined up. But when you come home, don't expect to find me there. And don't expect to find your stuff either. Consider this my official notice." With that, I turned and walked out of the room. My heart was pounding, and my hands were shaking, but I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The sound of whispers and gasps followed me as I made my way down the stairs and out of the building. When I got to my car, I sat there for a moment, letting the reality of what had just happened sink in. I'd done it. I'd finally stood up for myself. But instead of feeling relieved, I felt empty. 6 years of marriage, reduced to this. How had it all gone so wrong? On the drive home, I couldn't stop replaying the scene in my head. The look on Claire's face, the stunned silence of the crowd, Jason's pathetic attempt to explain himself. Part of me wanted to scream, to cry, to punch something. But another part of me, the part that had been quietly suffering for months, felt strangely calm. When I got home, I started packing. I wasn't sure where I was going yet, but I knew I couldn't stay here. This house, this life, it was all tainted now. I grabbed a few essentials, threw them into a suitcase, and left a note on the kitchen counter. Claire, I meant what I said. We're done. Don't try to call me. You made your choice, and now I'm making mine. Elliot, as I walked out the door, I realized this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of something new, something better. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I was in control of my own life. But little did I know, this was just the beginning. Claire wasn't going to let me go without a fight, and the chaos that followed would make the events of that night look tame in comparison. The morning after, I woke up in a cheap motel room. I hadn't slept much, my mind replaying the events of the party on an endless loop. The weight of what I'd done, walking out, ending things so publicly, was starting to hit me. But as much as it hurt, I knew I'd made the right decision. When I checked my phone, there were 12 missed calls and dozens of messages from Claire. Most of them were a mix of anger and desperation. Claire, how could you humiliate me like that? Claire, come home and let's talk about this. Claire, you're being dramatic, Elliot. We can fix this. I deleted the messages without replying. I didn't trust myself to respond calmly, and honestly, I didn't want to hear her excuses anymore. By mid-morning, the calls started coming from my mom. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. Elliot, what the hell happened last night? She demanded. Claire called me in tears, saying you embarrassed her in front of all her colleagues. She says you misunderstood everything. Misunderstood? I shot back, my anger bubbling to the surface. Mom, I caught her with another man. She's been lying to me for months. Don't tell me I misunderstood that. There was a pause, and then my mom sighed. Elliot, marriage is hard. People make mistakes. Are you really going to throw everything away over one incident? Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. It wasn't one incident, Mom, I said, my voice shaking. It's been building for months. And I'm not the one who threw it away, she did. After hanging up, I realized just how alone I felt. My family seemed more concerned about Claire's feelings than mine. It was like no one understood how much pain I was in. But instead of breaking down, I focused on the one thing I could control, my next steps. I called a lawyer. The meeting was short and straightforward. The lawyer explained the process for filing for divorce and what I could expect in terms of dividing assets. It felt surreal, like I was talking about someone else's life. But as painful as it was, it also gave me a sense of direction, a way to move forward. By the time I left the office, I had a plan. I'd file for divorce, find a new place to live, and start rebuilding my life. Claire could say whatever she wanted, but I wasn't going back. That evening, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown, Elliot, this is Jason. Can we talk? I didn't know she was married. I swear. I stared at the message for a long time, debating whether to respond. In the end, curiosity won out. Me? Fine. What do you want? His reply came almost instantly. I think you should know what Claire's been saying about you. Can we meet? I didn't trust him, but I agreed. If there was more to this story, I needed to hear it. I met Jason at a small cafe downtown. He looked uncomfortable, shifting in his seat as I approached. For a guy who'd played a part in blowing up my marriage, he seemed more nervous than smug, which caught me off guard. Thanks for meeting me, he said, standing to shake my hand. I ignored the gesture and sat down. Just get to the point, I said flatly. What do you want to tell me? Jason sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Look, first off, I didn't know she was married at first. She told me you two were separated, that it was complicated. I only found out the truth a few weeks ago. I leaned back, crossing my arms. And yet, you stayed involved. Real stand-up guy. Huh? He winced but didn't argue. Yeah, I deserve that. But I cut things off the moment I found out. That's why I wanted to talk to you. I think you need to know what she's been saying about you. That caught my attention. What do you mean? Jason hesitated, then pulled out his phone. She's been texting me since the party, trying to explain herself. She's blaming you for everything, saying you've been controlling, emotionally distant, even borderline abusive. My jaw tightened as he handed me his phone. Sure enough, there were pages of messages from Claire, painting me as the villain. Claire. Elliot's always been insecure. He doesn't know how to treat me right. Claire. He overreacted like he always does. I couldn't take his whining anymore. Claire. Jason, please. You're the only one who understands me. It was like a punch to the gut. She wasn't just trying to justify her actions. She was rewriting the entire narrative of our marriage. I handed the phone back, my hands shaking. Why are you showing me this? I asked. What do you get out of it? Jason sighed. Honestly, I feel like crap about what happened. I didn't know the full story, and now that I do, I think you deserve to know too. I'm not trying to make excuses. I just wanted to come clean. I didn't know whether to believe him, but at that moment, it didn't matter. His text confirmed what I'd already suspected. Claire was trying to shift the blame, painting herself as the victim and me as the problem. I don't know if I should thank you or punch you, I said finally, standing up. Jason gave me a weak smile. I'd probably deserve the punch, but for what it's worth, I hope things work out for you. I left the cafe feeling numb. Every time I thought I'd hit rock bottom, another revelation dragged me down even further. But I wasn't going to let Claire win. If she wanted to twist the story, I'd make sure the truth came out. That night, I started gathering evidence. Old texts, emails, even receipts for the nights she claimed to be working late. If this turned into a fight, I wasn't going to go down without a defense. But deep down, I knew the worst was yet to come. Claire wasn't just going to let me walk away quietly, and I had a sinking feeling she had one last trick up her sleeve. The next day, I woke up to the sound of my phone buzzing incessantly. It was my mom again. I let it go to voicemail, but the notifications didn't stop. This time, they weren't just from her. They were from friends, extended family, even old coworkers. Confused, I opened my social media and immediately understood why. Claire had posted a long, emotional message on Facebook, accompanied by a picture of us on our wedding day. The caption read, "Sometimes, the people you love the most turn into strangers." I tried everything to save my marriage, but Elliot's insecurity and refusal to communicate drove me into a dark place. I made mistakes, but I wasn't the only one at fault. I hope one day he'll find the peace and forgiveness he needs. The comments section was a disaster. People were offering her sympathy, blaming me, and some even accusing me of being controlling or neglectful. It was a complete rewrite of our reality, and she was weaponizing it to make me look like the bad guy. I slammed my phone down, my blood boiling. Callie, one of my closest friends, and someone who had seen Claire's behavior firsthand, texted me almost immediately. Callie, saw her post. What a load of BS. You need to tell your side of the story. But did I? Part of me wanted to respond, to put the truth out there and shut Claire's narrative down. But another part of me didn't want to get dragged into her public circus. This wasn't just about social media. It was about control, and Claire was desperate to keep it. I decided to stay quiet, at least for now. Instead, I focused on filing for divorce. My lawyer advised me to document everything, so I spent the day combing through old messages, financial records, and anything else that could support my case. It was exhausting and demoralizing, but it gave me a sense of purpose. I wasn't just reacting to Claire anymore. I was taking control of my life. By evening, my mom showed up at my motel unannounced. She looked upset, clutching her purse like it was a lifeline. "Elliot, what's going on?" she demanded the moment I opened the door. "Claire is devastated, and now the whole family is talking about it. Why didn't you tell me things were this bad?" I sighed, stepping aside to let her in. "Because I knew you'd take her side," I said bluntly. "Just like you always do." "That's not fair," she protested. "I just want to understand." "Fine," I said, crossing my arms. "Claire cheated on me, lied to me, and now she's lying to everyone else about why our marriage fell apart. She's not the victim here, Mom. I am? My mom's face fell. She cheated on you, she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I said, my voice firm. And she's been twisting the story ever since. That Facebook post? It's all lies. She sat down on the edge of the bed, looking stunned. I had no idea. Well, now you do, I said. So maybe think twice before you defend her next time. For the first time, my mom didn't have a response. She just sat there, her expression a mix of guilt and disbelief. After she left, I felt a small sense of relief. Maybe, just maybe, my mom was starting to see the truth. But I wasn't naive enough to think that would stop Claire. She'd already proven she was willing to do whatever it took to control the narrative, and I had no doubt she was planning her next move. And I was right. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. Unknown, Elliot, it's Claire. We need to talk. There's something you should know. I stared at the message, my heart sinking. Whatever she was planning, I had a feeling it wasn't going to end well. I hesitated before responding to Claire's text. What could she possibly have to say at this point? My instincts told me to ignore it, but curiosity got the better of me. Me, what do you want, Claire? Say whatever you need to say here. Her reply came quickly. Claire, not over text. Meet me at the cafe on Elm Street tonight at 7. It's important. Against my better judgment, I agreed. If she had something to say, I wanted to hear it in person. At the very least, I'd get some closure, or so I thought. When I arrived at the cafe, Claire was already there, sitting at a corner table. She looked different, more composed than I'd expected, almost like she'd rehearsed whatever she was about to say. Her phone was on the table, face down, as though she wanted me to believe she was fully present. I sat down across from her, keeping my distance. All right, I'm here. What's so important? Claire folded her hands in front of her, her expression unreadable. I wanted to apologize, she began. For everything. For the lies, the cheating, all of it. I blinked, caught off guard. Of all the things I expected her to say, this wasn't it. Okay, I said cautiously. And I need you to understand why it happened, she continued. Not to excuse it, but to explain. Things haven't been good between us for a long time, Elliot. I felt like we were drifting apart. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. So your solution was to drift into someone else's bed? Great logic, Claire. She flinched but didn't argue. I know I messed up, she said quietly. But the truth is, it wasn't just Jason. Her words hit me like a freight train. My stomach turned, and I struggled to keep my voice steady. What do you mean, wasn't just Jason? She looked down at her hands, twisting her wedding ring, a habit I hadn't noticed in years. There were others, she admitted. 2, maybe 3. I don't even know anymore. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The air felt heavy, suffocating. All this time, I'd thought Jason was the problem. But this was a whole new level of betrayal. Why are you telling me this now? I finally managed to say. What do you expect me to do with this information? Claire looked up, her eyes pleading. Because I want to make things right. I know I can't undo what I've done, but I want to try. Please, Elliot, give me a chance to fix this. I stared at her, dumbfounded. Fix this? I repeated. Claire, there's no fixing this. You didn't just cheat. You systematically destroyed our marriage and lied about it every step of the way. And now you want me to just, what? Forgive you? She reached across the table, but I pulled back before she could touch me. I'm not asking for forgiveness, she said, her voice trembling. I'm asking for a fresh start. I stood up, unable to listen to any more. You can have your fresh start, Claire, I said, my voice cold. But it won't be with me. As I walked out of the cafe, I felt a strange mix of anger and relief. Anger at her audacity, but relief that I finally had all the answers. Claire wasn't just a liar. She was a stranger, someone I didn't recognize anymore. But as I drove away, another thought crept into my mind. If Claire was willing to admit to all of this now, what else was she hiding? After leaving the cafe, my mind raced with everything Claire had just confessed. The weight of her words, it wasn't just Jason. sat heavily on my chest. I thought I had hit rock bottom after finding out about Jason, but now it felt like I'd fallen even further. I didn't know how many lies were still buried beneath the surface, but I was determined to find out. That night, I started piecing things together. I pulled out my laptop and went through every detail I could remember from the last year of our marriage. The late nights at work, the sudden business trips, the unexplained charges on our credit card. It all started to add up. Claire had always been careful, but there were gaps in her story, and I was going to find them. The first clue came from our joint bank account. Months ago, I'd noticed a series of small withdrawals, nothing major, but enough to catch my attention. Claire had brushed them off as lunches with colleagues or miscellaneous expenses. At the time, I didn't think much of it, but now I looked closer. The withdrawals were all from the same ATM near a hotel downtown. My stomach churned as I clicked through my browser, pulling up reviews of the hotel. It was the kind of place you'd book for privacy, not luxury. The timeline matched perfectly with the dates Claire had claimed to be working late. I didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was staring me in the face. The second clue came from her phone records. I knew it was risky to dig into her personal information, but at this point, I didn't care. I noticed frequent calls and texts to an unfamiliar number, more than any colleague would warrant. With a mix of dread and determination, I called the number. A man's voice answered. Hello? I froze for a moment, unsure of what to say. Yeah, who is this? I stammered. This is Chris, the man replied cautiously. Who's asking? I didn't recognize the name, but his voice sounded vaguely familiar. Do you know Claire? I asked, my voice tight. There was a pause. Yeah, I know her. Why? My blood ran cold. She's my wife, I said bluntly. How do you know her? Chris let out a shaky laugh. Man, I didn't know she was married. She told me she was single. We hooked up a few times. I'm sorry, I had no idea. I hung up before he could say more, my hands trembling. Another man. Another betrayal. How many times had she done this? How many lies had she told to cover her tracks? I felt like I was unraveling, but I knew I couldn't stop now. There was one more place to look, her laptop. Claire had always been protective of her laptop, but she wasn't home to stop me. I booted it up, guessing her password on the third try. Her email was open, and what I found made my stomach drop. There were messages to and from multiple men, some dating back over a year. Flirty conversations, explicit photos, plans to meet up. It was all there, laid out in painful detail. She hadn't just cheated. She'd built an entire double life. By the time I closed the laptop, it was almost morning. I felt sick, exhausted, and utterly betrayed. But I also felt something else, clarity. Claire had spent months, maybe even years, tearing down our marriage with her lies and infidelity. And now I finally had the proof. The next step was clear. I forwarded everything I'd found to my lawyer and drafted a message to Claire. I know everything. Don't bother trying to explain. You'll be hearing from my lawyer. Her reply came almost instantly. Claire, Elliot, please. Let me explain. I can fix this. I swear. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. As I sat there, watching the sun rise, I realized that I wasn't just mourning the loss of my marriage. I was mourning the person I thought Claire was. But now, for the first time in a long time, I felt free. Free to move on, free to rebuild, free to find someone who would actually value me. But something told me Claire wasn't going to let me go that easily. Claire didn't stay quiet for long. Less than 24 hours after I sent her that message, I started getting calls from mutual friends, co-workers, and even distant family members. She was spreading her version of the story far and wide, painting herself as the victim and me as the villain. She told everyone you were controlling. One friend told me over the phone that you wouldn't let her have any freedom, and that's why she acted out. She's claiming you've been emotionally neglecting her, another said. She's saying this whole thing is your fault. I wasn't surprised, but it still stung. Claire wasn't just trying to defend herself. She was trying to destroy me. And the worst part? Some people were actually believing her. By the end of the day, I was exhausted. My phone buzzed constantly with notifications, each one dragging me further into the chaos. But then, a message came through that changed everything. It was from Callie, my close friend, and one of the few people who had supported me through all of this. Callie, Elliot, I think you need to see this. Attached was a screenshot of Claire's latest social media post. It was a long, tearful apology that began with, "I never wanted it to come to this, but Elliot is forcing my hand." She went on to accuse me of everything under the sun: gaslighting, emotional abuse, even financial manipulation. It was a masterclass in victimhood, carefully crafted to make her look innocent and me look like a monster. But then, something in the comments caught my eye. A man named Chris, the same Chris I'd spoken to on the phone, had left a reply. "Chris, that's not what you told me. You said your husband was clueless, and you were using him until you could move in with me. Don't play the victim now." The comment had only been up for a few minutes, but it already had dozens of likes. Claire had tried to delete it, but the damage was done. People were starting to see through her lies. Over the next few days, the tide began to turn. Other men Claire had been involved with started coming forward, sharing their own stories. Some messaged me privately, apologizing for their roles in the situation. Others went public, adding their voices to the growing chorus of people exposing Claire for who she really was. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I wasn't alone. But Claire wasn't done. She showed up at my motel unannounced, pounding on the door until I let her in. She looked frantic, her carefully maintained composure completely gone. "Elliot, please," she said, her voice breaking. "You have to stop this. It's ruining my life." "Your life?" I repeated, incredulous. "Claire, you ruined our marriage. You lied to me, cheated on me, and now you're trying to destroy my reputation. What did you think was going to happen?" She started crying, big, dramatic tears that once would have made me feel guilty. But not anymore. "I made mistakes," she sobbed, "but I didn't mean for it to go this far. Can't we just move on? Can't we find a way to fix this?" I shook my head, my voice firm. "No, Claire. There's nothing left to fix. I'm done." The divorce was finalized a few months later. Claire tried to fight it, but the evidence I'd gathered was overwhelming. She didn't get a dime from me, and the court even awarded me the house. It was a small victory, but it felt like justice. As for Claire, she faded into the background. Her attempts to control the narrative eventually backfired, leaving her isolated and alone. The people who once believed her lies now saw her for who she really was. Looking back, it's hard to believe how much my life has changed. Losing Claire was painful, but it was also the best thing that could have happened to me. For the first time in years, I feel free. Free to rebuild, free to move on, and free to find happiness on my own terms. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that sometimes the truth takes time to come out. But when it does, it's worth every second of the fight.